I mean, I guess I've never really spoken about it, but
Reece Whitley, sixth fastest time in the country this year.
I didn't get to create my own narrative. I mean, you're always misunderstood. I don't know. People might think I'm crazy for thinking that way. People may not get it. Again, like I started out as a 7-year-old that just wanted to get into a sport because he failed at it. That's all it was.
This episode was recorded in December 2022.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Denting. My name is Fernando Andrade, and today I have a very special guest here with me. Reece, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me back. Yeah, had to come by.
No, thanks for coming on. It's kind of crazy because it's one of my last episodes that I'm recording this year, and you're one of the first episodes I'm recording this year, so little full circle 2022 moment.
Nice.
For those that may not know you, would you like to reintroduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Reece Whitley from right outside of Philadelphia, a town called Lafayette Hill. Current 5th year on the men's swim team. And just trying to help my team out right now. So that's probably all that there is to me right now.
Yeah, awesome. What's the situation with the 5th year in terms of studying?
Yeah. So, I graduated from our House School of Business over the summer.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. Amazing feat. I definitely don't want to take that for granted. I committed to this school, this university when I was, 17-year-old kid, didn't really know where I wanted. I knew what direction I wanted to be in life, but to actually kind of see it, I guess, relatively come together in what you would expect out of 4 years at an institution. I, by all means, am very lucky to have earned an opportunity here and to actually live through it and graduate was great. But now there are professional certificates offered through our extension program at Berkeley. And so a lot of 5th years who are kind of looking for a 1-year, semester by semester opportunity to stay sharp, but also stay eligible. It's great. It's a little different than Haas, so I was able to do a bit more traveling this fall than I have in the past. And so trying to not only stay sharp on that end, but put a little bit more emphasis on performance in the fall was really nice. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I saw you were traveling all over the place with the World Cup, which is great, and we'll talk about that later. But let's take it back to the very beginning, which is something we talked about last episode.
Yeah.
Very different topic. This one is about you.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of research, lots of interviews for you, especially since you were younger. And I came across that you started swimming back when you were 7 years old because you failed a test, a swimming test back in the day. So take me through how you got into the sport.
Certainly. So I attended the Penn Charter School. Again, amazing environment just to call home at an early age and just grow up in. But, I was very athletic as a kid. I wasn't very athletic. Let me rephrase. I liked to be outside. I liked to be active. I was not like an athletic kid in terms of how I was born. I was born big, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily athletically gifted. But fell into baseball, basketball, and swimming pretty fast. And with the swimming, basketball and baseball was a little bit more like purposeful in terms of me like getting into the sport, finding a team, wanting to do it. But with swimming, again, I was just a summer camper like everybody else. And I failed a deep water test, not only once, but like multiple times, like 3 or 4 times when I was 7. And I was a stubborn one. So I just didn't like to be told that I couldn't do something. And instead of like complaining about it, I tried to figure out, okay, how am I it was just simply to pass the test. So I could, be around my friends. That's all it was. And so I got lessons that summer. And then by the end of the summer, I think I passed the test. And then lessons carried into, the winter. And I actually started to do relatively well, like for a 7-year-old who had just hopped into the sport. And so by the next summer, I was competing competitively just kind of a summer club, and by age 8 or 9 is when I kind of got into year-round swimming, and swimming in the winter and summer and all seasons of the year. Swimming doesn't really stop. And, from that point on, I've been lucky enough to have access to really great coaching and great parenting. And, it's been a long, 15 years, something like that, since coming up on 15 years, I guess, in an amazing sport that's taught me a lot. So,
yeah, it's almost like we all want what we can't have, and I feel like that showed you the great that we now can see very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you wanted to be with your friends, and at least that was in summer camp. But did that play an influence in having to decide on a sport? Because you mentioned playing 2 other sports before that.
Yeah, no, I had a great base of friends in all the sports that I played. My basketball friends, again, I still have people that I'm in contact with today that I grew up playing basketball with. Baseball, not as much. But, personally, I loved the teams that I had an opportunity to play on. It's, some of my early introductions just to being a part of an organization and helping a group achieve something within my personal capabilities. But in swimming, there's so much self-accountability that you can learn. What you put in is what you get out, quite simply. And no matter how hard you work, you may not even see it come to true light for years to come. And so something about that, it's not necessarily glamorous, but I loved that I could see my progression in real time. Like, with a lot of the team sports which are great, a win or a loss, there's a lot of variables in that. But, more often than not, they might not even relate to you. Like, you can have a part of it, but there are always other people around and that can help you dictate that. And when you work towards that together, it can be really fun. But, at a young age, I was like, look, something about me just being able to see time drops, like personal time drops, and me working through practice to make something work and then see it. I was like, wow, I could, I just like this aspect of it. And I was lucky enough to perform at a relatively high level compared to, the era that I was born into. That's another part of swimming that's really cool, is that a lot of success is determined by who else chooses to swim.
Yeah.
And so, I guess versus the other 12, 13, 14-year-olds that I came up with, I did relatively fine and earned an opportunity to be here. And so there's not much else to it, I think. That's kind of what it's been.
Yeah, I feel like, especially with how quantitative the sport is,
mm-hmm.
It must become almost addicting, especially at those ages where it's like, at least now, it's not you hop in the pool any given time and you personal best. But back at those ages, I feel like, since with the constant growth, there's always PRs. Is that how it works?
Yeah. When you're a kid, you can pretty much drop a best time, after a couple months of work. It's definitely not the case. It's definitely harder to do that as an older, more experienced athlete, and especially as the times come down quite a fair bit. But I think there's so much rush in competition, and I love to compete. I love being in exciting atmospheres where, nobody knows what's going to happen, not even the athletes behind the blocks. But rest assured, the one that's, probably the toughest mentally has a pretty good shot of doing well. And so I tried to, just lock into my process and listen to my coaches. And again, it wasn't easy, kind of moving through that. And over time, as you do well, people's expectations kind of get lopped, like every part of life and like everybody. But I think as long as you keep it focused on yourself, I think it's always really rewarding, just by learning through process and not necessarily having it be about wins or losses, but more about honing in on a craft, more than anything else. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it's something I've thought about a lot, especially now that I'm a fan of these sports. I've always been obsessed with the quantitative sports, like you guys, like especially running. I did track. Like I did long distance track once in high school, just for it was stupid story and besides the point, but I just did it to get a Letterman jacket as a freshman. But that experience taught me so much because of how individualistic it was. And I mean, yes, you want your team to win, but it's an individual race. Whereas in soccer, the rest of my life, like you said, there's so many variables in a win and a loss, and it just changed my perspective. And that's nice that you somewhat got the experience of both of them, but it's definitely something I would recommend. Or like me thinking of like, I mean, many years in the future, but like for my kids, it's like, it'd probably be good to give them the experience of having both sports, like individual sports and a collective sport.
Certainly, because there are pros and cons to both, and it depends on what you just fall in love with. Do you want the process to just be very personal? Like, do you want a personal project to work on, or is it something a little bigger? And then, in swimming and in track, if you can do well enough with these individual sports, tennis, I think, is another one of those sports, or golf. In swimming and in track, there is a rare opportunity to be a part of something at the NCAA level that is so much bigger than yourself. So it doesn't really become, it turns. I'll put it that way. It's not necessarily as individual of a sport at the NCAA level. It becomes very focused on the group. At least at our program, I can't speak for other programs, but at least at Cal, we've done relatively well by investing in one another. And so I've only seen positives from that, and so I've fallen in love with that component of our sport. And, that's something I've only been introduced to, for, I guess, 4 or 5, I'm going on my 5th year, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
But I've loved it. And it's something that I've, now experienced, since freshman year. So very lucky.
Investing in one another. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that? Or give me an example of what that is.
Just always looking out. Our program, we only have, I guess we have 4 coaches now, and there are 38 guys. And we're combined now, so now combined programs, so there can be up to like 75 athletes in the water at once, and that's, you can do whatever ratios, right? But you rest assured, eyes can't be on you all the time, and so you just try to help your guys out. If you got to realize that everybody in the pool is really good at what they do. Somebody is doing something better than you. So there's always something to learn from somebody else. And there's always something that you can provide that somebody else may not be thinking about. And so, a lot of our group, has really bought into just like peer review. And, asking a guy, oh, hey, can you like help me look at this video? Can you help me walk through the swim? Or what are you thinking about during this swim? And when you have guys, that, quite frankly, are really good. You have guys that are Olympians, have medaled at the Olympics. You have guys that are chasing that. Then you have guys that are chasing, making a Pac-12 team, making an NCAA team. You have so many different levels, all very good. But, that's exactly why you love to be there, is because you can learn from these top guys. And you can have conversations with anybody on the team and just pass that learning around as much as you can. I think it makes it a lot easier on the coaches if the team can kind of have trust in one another and want to see positive outcomes for one another, because it makes their job a whole lot easier. They don't have to watch, 25 people, 50 people, 75 people at a time, because they know that they're taking care of each other. Yeah, and it's weird. I've been playing, while you were saying this, playing with this idea in my head of, well, they're a team, but they're not a team, but like as of performance, but they're not a team, but points wise they are. And it's interesting that, like, to put it this way, many people, when they look at Cal as a university, right, it's like, wow, what an incredible place. Mm-hmm. I was talking about this with my roommates recently. I think of college as a country club, for example. Yeah. Because not everybody, there's some people that didn't get,
Yeah. Some people that didn't get into Cal should have gotten into Cal and just as a student, and they just didn't for some reason.
Yeah.
But I think everybody here, what they have in common isn't that they're going to be excellent at whatever they do, but they have that pursuit within them.
Mm-hmm.
To put that more specifically with your team,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a country club in a way of some people wanting to make that Pac-12 team or the NCAA team or an Olympic pursuit or whatever.
Yeah.
And you guys are just like learning off each other, maybe for a team result, but mostly because you're individually just trying to get better, and that makes you a team. It's like it's a group of guys that are really good, that are trying to get better, and that's what makes you a team. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, no, it's and it's so easy to buy into. I was fortunate enough to come in on a really good team. The team did not need me whatsoever to win a title. It was an honor to help, go score in 2A finals as a freshman at the end of the year. It was a hostile environment down there in Austin, which, is one of our main sources of competition out there. And so, I was very lucky to just walk into a team with a lot of studs, a lot of really just well-rounded individuals that just so happened to perform really well in the pool. And so I got to learn a lot from them. But I think, to your point, I got that right out of the gate. I mean, it's at the meets, it's outside of the meets, it's in the hotel rooms, like when you have roommates at a meet, like it is constant when you know what's on the line. And if, again, I was lucky enough to just kind of see it happen, and we were able to win freshman year, but year after year, I've tried, again, to work through, being a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, a senior. I've tried to spread positive impact in the position that a sophomore, junior, senior can have and is supposed to do. Understanding different personality types, assessing what kind of team we have, where our strengths and weaknesses are, and learning how to help uplift as many people as you can. Because at the end of the year, it doesn't really matter what 18 guys are there. I could get injured, they may not need me. Anybody is kind of not on the chopping block, because I don't really think we have an environment that's like that. But, if something does happen, the next guy does need to be ready. So, I think if you can just kind of see that, and I think a lot of the guys understand that being in an NCAA final, XYZ, the pressure or whatever, that's a privilege. It's an opportunity. And so if you can wear that on your sleeve and just trust that the other guys want to see you do well in that situation, makes it easier to just buy in and compete for them, not necessarily compete for yourself as much.
Yeah, and I feel like for what you're talking about, it's very easy to even be thinking about that throughout the recruiting process. Like, Cal, they've won this, they've won that, they're on a roll. It's like, well, I'm not going to go there to fuck around, it's serious business. And I feel like whatever you choose to do, what like when business comes, what you have to do. And I feel like that's what's special about your program. So to talk about that culture and how you even got into it, let's talk about how you got there in the first place and how you chose that through your recruiting process. I mean, I know your resume from high school is absolutely ridiculous. What do you mean not? I mean, it's insane.
I mean, it was just, again, I think people have so much to offer outside of just a resume. And so I think it's a product of the environment. Yeah, like I did well. I tried to continue to do well, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm special for being like a highly recruited athlete out of high school. I think, there are a lot of people that get overlooked that may not have had XYZ kind of under their belt at the time, that have gone on to do sensational things. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It was a definitely interesting childhood that I had, and it was fun. And so I don't regret any of it.
I mean, by no means would I say that anything anyone does in high school defines them. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah.
What I meant was, swimming-wise, you had a great resume that leads to.
Yeah.
I'm sure you had many options. Is what I'm trying to get across of where you want to go.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other people that also had great resumes, but that leads to the opportunities of going to a school like Cal or having other options in hand. But you decided to move all the way across the country to Cal.
Of course.
Like I said, I'm sure you had many options. So what was your recruiting process like?
Yeah. It was a great process. Again, I was fortunate enough to have done well. Offered a lot to the table in terms of potentially some of the intangibles. I did go to school. I took school very seriously. I still do. That compared with, XYZ times across a number of events, I think I had a lot of options because I could help teams out in a lot of different ways. My recruiting process was pretty smooth, which I was very lucky. A lot of great schools. I reached out right on September 1st. But not too many people know this, but Cal was actually the last school to reach out to me. So here I was, however highly ranked or however people, make rankings, but I was up there. And so here I was, and I had a lot of friends on the team at the time, and you kind of know guys because the swimming community is very tight-knit at a certain level. And so a lot of the guys in NCAA before you even kind of step foot on campus. And so, I'd heard all these great things. You obviously look up to guys like Nathan Adrian, Ryan Murphy, like all the guys that you grew up watching at the Olympics. What's the common through line? It's like, oh, they swim at Cal. And I was a fan of them, not by what they did in the pool, but just how they carried themselves. In post-race, everything from post-race interviews to what I've heard through conversations. And you can't really bank on people's reputations and word of mouth, but throughout the recruiting process, there were just so many things that re-emphasized that you can really become a true, full individual at Cal. And so it was always my top kind of choice in the back of my mind, but I did not get any attention for the first 3 or 4 months of the recruiting season. And by that point, a lot of the kids in my class had already committed. And I guess I won't exactly say which school it was, but I was very close to committing someplace else. And then I got a text from a 510 number, which was a foreign area code to me at the time. Not anymore.
Yeah.
but it was this long text. I was in class, I think. And at the bottom, you had a little hash mark and it said Dave Durden. And I was just like, I was like, yeah, this is sick. This is what I've been waiting for. Set up a phone call with Dave, and I probably could have committed after the first phone call. Felt like I talked to him for 15 minutes. We talked for 2 hours. Just about everything, all that the school had to offer, how he felt about me personally, and a lot of the guys that were already in the program that I was familiar with, just kind of updating me on their process and kind of in the scope of the season, how they were going to do. And then, it was a really easy decision. I kind of narrowed my choices down really fast. I didn't take any of my official visits, which I probably would advise against for most people. I think people should take their time and really explore all their options if they think that that's the best move. But I knew in my gut that this was going to be the right move, and there's not a day that goes by where I think about any other school. I feel like I was born to come here and be a part of this program, and so it was a pretty easy decision for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome that it worked out that way, and pretty crazy to think that it could have gone another way, or that it took that long. Have you ever talked to your coach about why he took that long?
No. I feel like we have such a good relationship now. We always have, Durden and I. So, I'm sure when it's all said and done, I might ask him at the end of NCs. It's like, oh, did I do my job? I hope he'll say yes to a certain extent. Everybody has their ebbs and flows, right? I'm no stranger to that, but I think, I've tried very hard to do right by this program and do right by the people who have invested time in me to try to see me do well. And so at the end of the day, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in life, whether it's in the water, I've tried to just, again, just make the people who have put their time, effort, and skills into coaching me, into helping me blossom as a person, I try to pay them back with performance. I hope he thinks I did a solid job.
I'm sure you did. At least that's what the majority of Cal Athletics thinks, from what I've heard. But that's awesome, and I'm glad it worked out.
Mm-hmm.
The last time that we talked here, you mentioned how moving across the nation changed everything in terms of finally, like, people don't necessarily know who I am, and you liked it better that way. We talked about the media as well, and through the research this time around, I completely understand what you were talking about, because, did I have an idea? Yes, but I didn't know it was to that extent of what media companies were covering you, how many videos were up there, how many people would ask you for pictures, for autographs, for things like that. And it's not something I want to touch specifically on, like, oh, this company or this magazine or this newspaper. Mm-hmm. But you were portrayed a certain way or compared to big names or predicted to do certain things. Mm-hmm. How did that shape you into who you are in college today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, like, everybody does well. Everybody that does well in high school gets compared to somebody, and it's tough because I think it takes away from both people. Comparison is the thief of joy. So I think that whatever people do to get clicks or whatever, I've come to learn that nobody in media is a friend. No matter what they are to you, no matter the narrative that they so choose to develop around you, I've learned that, nobody really cares about the individual. So you have to do things through, your character, the way you carry yourself, through performance that generate your own narrative. And so if you're lucky enough to deliver on a performance perspective, you can, do some things. It's like, all right, you can't really talk to me about that anymore because it's done. But, for better or for worse, it's just like, these are things that force you to mature at a pretty early age. And so, I have no regrets about any kind of step in my career. I think we're all so different. So, you want to compare person to person. It's just like, there's no real point in doing that because people have different motivations. People have different things that they want to pursue. There could be, some age grouper out there that is, a world-class violinist, but also has times that, the rest of the swimming world would see as amazing, and, he has no other options. But it's like, people are really well-rounded. And so I think trying to make comparisons to people is unfair to them. And it's unfair to the people who have gone on to do said things. But I've just tried to stay level as my career has developed and understand that, there's so many ways to define a successful career. And I think if you can kind of keep it simple for yourself, then the rest will kind of fall into place. It won't make things like super big or super like, oh my goodness, because people I've learned again over time that media, people on the street, sometimes even your friends, can just like blow things up in ways that they really aren't. Yeah. So as long as you just keep your own reality within perspective and obviously not try to dampen other people's moods, but move through your day in a way that's like, oh, I'm going to keep these things within a certain frame of priority and I'm going to do things my way. If you've again, have a track record that you're pretty comfortable with, and you have a process that, you're able to learn through, I think, the world can be yours. But you just have to not get caught up in all that comes with this outside noise. And so I think if that's shaped anything for me, I've learned how to quiet out noise probably more than my high school self did.
At what age did you realize that, or at what age did you learn that?
Media attention started to come when I was 12. There are interviews out there of me, with round glasses.
I saw them.
As a youngster, and there are kids even younger now. I think like Destin Lasco on our team. There are videos of Destin when he was like a 10-year-old that are out there asking pretty tough questions. The questions that I couldn't imagine myself asking a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. You just have to realize these things.
It's also crazy to me, why do you care to cover media on a 10-year-old?
Exactly. It's I guess I've never really spoken about it, but it can be me. It can be me. I can do that. Obviously I hope that, I will obviously invest in my kids. And so that I think when you invest in kids, in your own kids, it's very natural for you to help them go through life and help them figure things out, just like my parents did for me. But in terms of somebody else, I just don't get it. So I'm not gonna speak poorly about it. I'm not gonna speak positively about it, because I just don't know the space in my just understanding and the way my brain works. I just don't. I just couldn't see myself ever doing that. So I'm sure that media folks in media and folks that are good at their job, and journalists that are doing that are practicing journalism for themselves and not for just clicks, XYZ, or to project a narrative on somebody that they don't like or do like. There's truly non-biased work. I think there are probably great reasons for it, and I'm not a journalist, so you're gonna have to ask them. But in terms of my perspective, from an athlete's perspective, I just don't even understand just that side of life, and so I just choose not to really dwell on it. I just try to focus on what I'm good at.
Yeah, and it's an interesting take. It's a very interesting take because of your lived experience, right? I was just talking with a friend literally this past week, and it was they had a very different take to someone I also know. I happen to know both people. Mm-hmm. She was talking about two people. I happen to know both, mm-hmm. and she was giving me her take. And I told her, there's this great phrase I like that's, in a polarized society, having a conversation is an act of rebellion. Mm-hmm. And for me, in case you haven't noticed, which I'm sure you have, mm-hmm. I love social media. I think social media with a purpose mm-hmm. is good. Yeah. But I'm not going to say, Reece has this opinion. No, because if I were in your shoes, I would probably have that same opinion as well.
Everybody has their own perspective. And that's exactly why I'm not, picking sides or... I don't have the work. I don't have the understanding. It just hasn't been a part of my life. So I just wouldn't, on these types of things. And I think this is where there's separation. Is just I just choose to not comment. I choose to let the others do their own thing, and I've just kind of hopped in on a funnel of just focus, and a lot of the outside factors have just not eaten away. I've just chosen to allocate my time with intent and purpose, and that just so happens to be just swimming. It's not I love I have great friends that produce great works for magazines, XYZ. But again, it's just something that I haven't found personal progress in. And I think that's kind of my main point here is like looking through media, looking through XYZ. It's all people that don't have your experience, for better or for worse. And so whether they are praising you or ripping you apart, there's no real. I think it gets dangerous when you invest too much. You can invest if that's what gives you confidence, if that's what gets you up. And don't get me wrong, like I love going to meets and meeting people who have supported me throughout my career, people who have stories of, oh, like you were so nice to my kids, or you were so nice to me at age 13, 14, 15. When you read my first grader a book, at Penn Charter, I would do reading sessions like with kids and, or anything, I was there at, the day of service that you started and that inspired me to do something. There are cool stories that I get to, again, now in my career, appreciate way more than I did when I was like 17, 18, because I just was kind of doing my own thing again. But it turns out that these things had positive effects on people. And so I use that as like my, source of like, okay, like maybe you are figuring things out. You could not be, but at least in the past, if you stick to certain motivations and choose to act on those urges, they can do impactful things. And so I've tried to stay focused on that, and producing impact as opposed to getting, again, caught up in like positive comparisons or like, oh, this kid didn't do that, XYZ, like, oh, write him off completely, like he's a failure, whatever, or he's like, the next big thing. Like I just have chosen to just accept everybody as they are, and whether they achieve what they want to achieve or not, they're not less of anything, or more of anything, if they do achieve the said goals or not. You know what I mean? Like they are true, like there are so many variables in life. So it's like, how can you get caught up in the dichotomy of do or don't? It's either you do or you don't. And if you do, great. If you don't, there are learning opportunities in that.
Yeah.
And so why would you, on either side, get caught up too much in that? So I think I've just tried to just ride the line and stay level, and just have fun. I think it's allowed me to have fun in creating a craft, developing a craft, investing in my guys. That allows me more time to do those things.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that if you focus more on that, you can have a much greater impact in helping the group move forward. So I've tried to do that in my time at Cal, and just kind of adding experience to my life. It's just like, okay, I want to continue to find ways to do that. I want to continue to find ways to generate impact to a collective, to something that's bigger than myself. And so I've just had a lot of fun in that process, and you get to meet great people along the way. And I think hopefully I've done right by as many people as possible, because I'd love to take my entire group of guys from the people that I had on the team with me freshman year all the way till now. There's so many great people. Everybody has been an amazing person to me, and I have great relationships with all of my guys. And so I'd love to take all of that and into the future.
Yeah.
So
no, that's awesome, and it's crazy how things are shaped. Like the last episode I posted, like the most recent one, was Isabel Ivy, and to a certain extent, she had a similar high school experience with media, things like that, and she talked about the same thing here. She was like, I don't like the media, and I want to be someone besides this. And the majority of the podcast was Isabel Ivy more than a swimmer.
Yeah.
And just who she is and her thoughts. And we talked about these same thoughts, or we talked about like, what if there is no swimming, like things like that. And I think, like you said very well, it forces you to mature early, but in a way, I think that's so cool that you guys got that experience so early, because now you get more time to focus on the things that actually matter.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that obviously a lot of great athletes on your team, I'm sure some of them are still chasing the media hype and things like that, as any athlete would. Because when you're starting out or when you're not there yet, you think, well, that's what I want. That's what's cool. And when you're on the other side and you realize, like, hey, that's not what it's about, you get to focus on what actually matters.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you also end up learning, is that the guys who have done it at a high level from a very early age really still don't care. Like, it's not what it's about. It's more about just having confidence in preparation, and having confidence in your process. And the other stuff, all the superficial accolades, again, are just kind of happenstance of the process, or I guess a development of the process. And so, at the same time, you can literally do the same things and have it fall to shambles. Like, yes, you can not win an NCAA championship after however many months of hard work and process focus and a mindset, but that doesn't mean that you didn't get anything out of it. I hate that mentality, and I'd like to see more people just kind of understand that, like, you're so much more than a win or a loss, or so much more than what other people around you, for better for worse, like, decide as superficial indicators of success. Like, it's not about that. Like, it's about personal development. I don't know. People might think I'm crazy for thinking that way. People may not get it. But that's how I've chosen to just kind of roll through life, is focusing on urges, and problem solving. And if you can, it might feel like you're failing in the moment, but if you do have signs of, breaking through, breaking through obstacles and working through things, and it comes together in terms of, like, I don't know, feeling good during a swim, or feeling really bad, but, like, still being stoked to be there. Or, doing well on a test that you didn't think you were going to do well on, or assisting in a case competition, or delivering in a class presentation, things like that. If you get joy out of that, it's like, why not do the things? Why not simply focus on the things that give you joy, and that give you energy? And so, yeah, I mean, in that, I think that's where I've found the most growth. And so, I don't try to spill that on other guys, because, again, everybody has different sources of motivation, different goals, different experiences. But I think that the certain points that I touched on regarding success, I think that can be applied to everyone. I think everybody can learn from that. And fortunately, I just have so many guys that are really good at what they do. And I've found it to be a very similar mentality in terms of not focusing on the tangibles, but focusing on the process. So that's what I've chosen to do. And, hopefully 20 years from now, I'll be able to look back and say I did a relatively good job of sticking to process. Again, regardless of, like, superficial factors or superficial wins and losses. But in terms of who you are on your inside. So
I've been trying to touch on that a lot here on the podcast, specifically because it's one of the things that I learned this year, me personally, just in my own life, and it's what I'd like to call the happiness circle, right? Mm-hmm. Happiness being a means to its own end, meaning that the process is what brings you joy, which is why you continue doing it. And regardless of the result, you're going to get back up and you're going to keep on doing it over and over and over again in a cycle, because you're in love with that process, because you love that. And like you said, I feel like that's what brings personal growth, personal development. And it's not for a trophy. It's for, 20 years down the line, not to say I accomplished all of this, but rather to look back on those 20 years and say, wow, that's a life well lived.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I think.
Of course. And it's important to reflect as well. I think when you have that mentality, it can be easy to just kind of let things roll by. Which, I've done a poor job of in the past of just like sitting back and reflecting. It's like, oh, geez, like, again, like I started out as a 7-year-old that just wanted to get into a sport because he failed at it. That's all it was. That's all it was. So you got to look back and be like, wow, like there is a lot of time in between now and then. And you've done things poorly. You've done things the right way. And you just got to be happy with where things are. You know, my god brother, who is, I'm an only child, but my god brother, a lot of people kind of know us together. My friends know his, know me or know him and vice versa. And, he's with the Houston Texans now. And, it started, he's more than halfway through his first NFL season. And it's just like, I got to spend some time with them over Thanksgiving and just kind of sit back and reflect on like, dude, like we were literally 7 years old, man, like playing in the backyard, bro. And now you're playing on Sundays. And it's like, you just have to realize that these things can happen. And as long as you just, again, stay grounded and focus on yourself. But again, it's like these things, life can be crazy. And so I think as long as you just stay diligent and driven, but also take a step back sometimes and say, hey, look, you didn't think you would be here, but here you are, keep it moving. That's how I've chosen to live. And, there are certain friends that I have that I will consider lifelong friends that think the same way. So I'm going to, continue to cherish the time that I have with them. And, again, just try to deliver and try to impact as best as I can. So,
yeah. Do you think, and to another point, because what I've found to be in my own life is it makes sense in my head. It's a good way to live. Mm-hmm. But sadly, I don't think that this is how the world works because, once again, people praise or live for or think that the tangible, superficial thing is the main goal. Mm-hmm. I've experienced this, mm-hmm. and I'm wondering if you have as well. Do you think having this mentality makes you be misunderstood by others?
I mean, you're always misunderstood. That's the thing. Like you can't get worried about again what other people think. Like for better or for worse, it comes back to that same point. It's just like, yes, like I probably am, but so is the next person with a different mentality. Yeah. So it's like you can't. I mean, yes, you can be misunderstood by people. You can be supported. You can be hated. And I'm not gonna sit up here and say, "Oh, I have haters," but it's like, there are people that everybody is not liked by everybody, but it's better to focus on again, like the process, and try to uplift as many people as possible, and that's what I feel like I've tried to do. So, I've tried to let people live in their own being because, for better or for worse. During my childhood, I wasn't fully able to because of, XYZ being blown out of proportion. I didn't get to create my own narrative growing up, so I try to let other people create theirs.
You're clearly on the other side of it now, and I'm starting to experience it at a very, very smaller level than you are. Mm-hmm. And these are all questions like, it's genuine because it's like, yeah. I'm going through things that you're talking about right now, which is, it's super cool. Yeah. When you have this idea that's created by the media, by reputation, by word of mouth, by people, by whoever it is, mm-hmm. and people can look at you as, oh, he's that guy, or quote unquote, he's a perfect kid, yeah. or whatever. What do you do when, like, is it as easy as not giving a fuck about what people think about you, or it's like you don't ruin that reputation, or you're just who you are? Or...
No, man, like it's who you are. It's who you are. The positives and the negatives. So like if people have things to say, yeah, like you can choose to believe in them or not. Even if, I've chosen to believe things in the past and it's been detrimental. And so I've learned through that process to not focus on the negatives, but instead, like if people have, again, genuine stories to tell about how you made them feel, if you can find new ways to deliver that and bring that to people, like that's what I'm going to focus on. Like that's what fills me up with energy. If I can contribute, again, to a national championship, to some kid who wants to learn how to swim, to some kid that just wants advice, not even from a swimmer, but an athlete in general. Like there's so many different situations where people can impact one another. But if you can generate, again, for yourself, oh, that guy offered me something, or he made me feel good in a certain way. He made me feel bad, XYZ. Like, again, if you can get to a spot to where you can just try to do right by folks, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But fortunately, again, like I've just tried to ride steady and do things that I guess have made me feel good in the past. Like when I've been invested in, when I've been listened to, when I've been exposed to certain things. Again, I think that's because people have chosen to invest in me. It's not because I've done XYZ up to this state, or up to this time, up to this point in time. It's not about the past. It's because of one person saying, hey, look, I'm going to invest in this kid. We'll see what he does with it. And just that opportunity in and of itself, that exchange is a blessing. So if you can choose to like invest in people and try to help them become their best selves, like people have tried to do for me, I think, in your own way, like people may not be asking for it. And again, like I haven't always asked for advice, so I don't try to blow anything on other people. I think I'm pretty guarded in that. And again, I have my own things to do, as everyone does. But if somebody, again, like my curious self, once asked a question or a series of questions, or maybe didn't even ask, but you knew you wanted a little bit of something. Like every kid has an urge, has a bite, has an itch. And, people like coaches, mentors can see that. And so when they provide great advice, it's relieving, like for kids like us. And so if you can just try to put yourself in other people's shoes, and say, hey, look, like, okay, if I invest a little bit of time here and make them excited, offer critique, give them something to bite at, give them something to prove. I think it can be great. And, I've learned that a lot through giving some lessons now. People can sign up for courses now. It's been a whole part of the whole NIL kind of landscape. And so me kind of looking back at the kids who, again, have invested in me, I have a duty and a right to invest in them. And so, it's done, great things for my understanding on life and perspective, that I'm going to try to hold with me, well beyond, my career, well beyond me existing in Berkeley, wherever I go. I've learned that the exchange of investing time in people can be really helpful. And so, if you can do it positively and uplift people, then, I think, you're probably doing the right thing.
Yeah. It's funny because something that, again, wrong for many people, but some people do think that the purpose of this podcast is, they have these, again, tangible, superficial things. They have this resume, they have this, that. But the name denting comes from leaving your dent in the universe, and to me, that is not, well, I mean, it could be accomplishing XYZ, tangible, superficial, XYZ.
Certainly. Because there are real goals out there.
Yes.
People have goals. I have goals. Everybody has goals.
But it's a storyline behind it that I'm interested in. If not, it would not be a sit-down conversation. It'd be something quick, and that's it.
Yeah.
But it's that storyline behind it, and I think that the beauty of denting isn't necessarily the golden medal, the golden trophy. It's the storyline behind that impacts someone else, that leaves a dent in someone else to be able to inspire others to do the same. And it's something that you're doing like with those kids, and even with me right now, that it's like I had those questions. Oh yes, because I have those questions, genuine questions. These aren't things that I have written down. These are genuine questions, and you're giving them great answers.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's an interesting perspective with everything, and like I said, I've been going through some of that like this past week or the past few weeks. I'm out, and my videos the past 3 months start getting more traction, which, all right, cool.
Yeah.
And it's what we were talking about with the numbers. Like when you're younger, you become addicted to like the quantitative sport. Same with me. It's like, all right, we got to keep working, got to keep posting.
And then it's even more dangerous when money's involved, because then you can start to do things.
Those numbers are also dangerous. Exactly. And it becomes addicting, and you want to put in more work, and it's that extrinsic motivation. But once it's like, all right, monthly for me, it's 100,000 people are watching the videos on Instagram, and it's like, all right, fun. This is a game. It's a video game.
Yeah.
But then I'm out, and people are like, oh, you're the guy from.
Yeah.
Oh, you're this guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit. Like, and that's why I was asking all these questions of like, they have this idea of who I am, what do I do, and things like that. But
it's a new frame.
Yeah.
It's a new frame.
And it's what I'm going through right now. So those were those questions. With the fifth year and everything you're at right now, I think it's crazy to connect from high school to fifth year, but it ties in very well to this conversation, I think.
Yeah.
When we last talked, you weren't really sure if you were going to do a fifth year or not.
Yeah.
And I saw like from NCs, you were like, I may be done.
Yeah.
You come back. I read this article that it was like you had to find your why behind it.
Yeah.
And right now you were talking about like what motivates you, but there wasn't really an answer. So like, what is that motivation? If it's not like, it's definitely not extrinsic, at least from what you're saying, in the sense of, oh, I won the third championship. And at least it doesn't seem to be. I don't know. It could be wrong, but what motivates you to come back a fifth year?
I had to think about what personally gets me going, like for swimming. Like I think it's kind of set in stone that obviously, ultimately, like, yes, the goal is to contribute to a national title, but that can't be the only thing. Because then I feel like you could just be, again, I think if it's too focused on others, although it's important you have to understand that you have to do certain things. So there's times where, like you're going to need to be selfish. And so I had to take my time this summer to be a little bit selfish, do things that I wanted to do, keep my toe in the water, stay fit. And that's what I love, is just the feeling of being in the water. Like there's no feeling like moving through a difficult piece of work, and getting through it. Finding a new way to be efficient in the water, executing on it, not only finding it, but executing it and chasing it in real time. And then having the opportunity in amazing atmospheres. I think of the World Cup and just like figuring it out in the moment, trying new things. And, if it goes well, it's like, it feels good. And so if you can find like those small wins and trying new things and like, again, taking a step and like, oh man, like I'm going to pursue this race strategy on the first time. And it might be an early season meet, but like, like this is the World Cup. Like these are the best athletes in the world. It could be fun to try things out at this stage and see how it works. And, it hasn't gone well in the the past, and it has gone well in the past, but I think when it does work, it's cool. And so I think that's what personally has brought me back, is to, again, continue to find new things to work on. Breaststroke is such an interesting stroke. It's the least efficient by all means, but I think there's the most opportunity in that. Quite literally. There are many different ways to try to be good in breaststroke swimming because of just how weird it is. And there's so much nuance versus breaststroke than, a lot of other strokes. I'm probably biased, but I think there's a reason that breaststroke is the slowest stroke. And people have the least amount of fun with it. So I've just tried to find solace in the water, develop a really good relationship with just, again, swimming, the act, and the structure of a swim, the structure of a stroke. And if the times do come, it's pretty cool, because then it's like that extra bit of quote unquote validation. But like I like feeling good in the water, and if you can do that, if you can do that to a point where you'll toss out points to, again, contribute to something that feels really good, and winning a team championship as a collective, like I'm probably going to continue to do it if I have another opportunity at that. So that's why I chose to come back. A little bit of personal for sure, because there has to be. But at the end of the day, like it's great to lift up a trophy at the end of March and jump in the pool with all your guys, and see that for them. Come back home for the guys that weren't necessarily there. And let them have that experience as well. Because unfortunately we can't take all 30 guys to the meet at the end of each season. And so if you can do well in the moment and bring that home for them to have that experience too, it more often than not, at least on the guys on this team, everybody is so hungry. So for the guys that don't get to go, that's also who you do it for, because you know that they want to be there and they want to contribute too. And more often than not, like, they do end up earning an opportunity. And so seeing that happen is also really cool. So that's what you do it for. That's why you come back for a fifth year.
In such a individual sport, like we were talking about in the beginning, with not being able to take all the guys, because there's obviously a limit to how many guys you can take to NCs. I'm sure as every other year, you guys have so many guys qualifying, but not everybody that qualified can go because of that limit. But then it's a team title.
Yeah.
And you talk about bringing that title back to these boys. And how does that work in swimming, where it's, everybody earned this title. We're all teammates, but you guys were competing in an individual lane. So was it?
But no, everybody did. Everybody did. Because at our program, everybody helps one another. Truly. Whether it's in the classroom or in the water, in training with one another every day, everybody gets looks at one another. And in seeing other things happen, like at least in our program, you're always going to get a benefit. And so I know that at the end of the year, like when I step up on the blocks and, place in an event, let's say, or help, our relay, for example, that won a national title last year, like that's a byproduct of the collective. That's a byproduct of the alumni. That's a byproduct of our coaches. That is a byproduct of the other guys that are working in the pool with Cal written on their caps. And so, because every guy that steps up has learned, and if they say that, I can't imagine any guy on my team saying like, oh, this was just me. I can't. I really can't. But there are people that do operate under that mentality, and that works for them. But I think, in my experience at Cal, it really is about the collective. And so it it's 18 guys at the end of the year max, but it is 38. It is the coaching staff. It is the alumni. It is the athletics department. It is the training staff that is behind the scenes. It is everybody. So
that's awesome. That's awesome that it feeds off that way, because that's how it should be in team sports, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But in such an individual sport, I didn't get that experience. And just that question there, you already mentioned NIL,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen that you've been at least more active with it from what I knew. So what's that experience been like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely a step out of my comfort zone. I had a stretch I still try to limit my time again on things that are outside of the books or swimming or just like investing in my friends. But when, you can monetize, yourself, I guess adding, building equity within yourself. When I talk about, financial equity, that's been cool. I've never really been asked my rate for anything before until now. So that's been cool, dictating that. Again, investing a bit of time in it. So with Cuts, for example, which, got the hoodie on right now. They've been a great sponsor, really comfortable clothing across the board. And when there's like a post quota, it's like, all right, how would I do this? How would I go about this? And luckily, we have talented photographers on our team. So it's been cool to work with Mike on that project, and it's been fun to ride that out with him. And obviously, it's cool to when you can kind of order a meal. I'll buy get a dinner, and it's like, my work helped me get this. It's cool, and obviously the clothes are amazing, so I get to be comfy.
Yeah.
And with the other stuff, more like, speeches or the courses, or the course that I ran in the fall, or just individual swim lessons, other projects. It's been cool. And if people are willing to, again, give a little bit of money to hear you speak, hear your opinion, there's that much more of a responsibility to do right by them, and do the most in your capacity to deliver something again to the client. That's something that they're going to be happy with, and that they can trust. And when, it's somewhere comes back and says, hey man, like this worked, like I dropped time, or comes back and says, oh, I got so much out of this. If you have to give a speech for an organization or something like that, and the people in the audience say, oh, I got something out of that, that's pretty cool. And so, it's not necessarily, again, about the financial impact, but I think the NIL opportunities have done so many things for athletes at the NCAA level, and it has changed the landscape of the NCAA. And I'm really excited to see how it all comes together moving forward. There's a lot of opportunity in this space, and it's very new. So I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Your values seem to be very aligned with the work that you're doing, NIL wise, at least how you were talking about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But right now that you mentioned how the NCAA could be impacted by it, what are your thoughts on that? Because many people aren't using their values to be aligned with these NIL deals, and I don't know. I feel like for NCAA wise, mm-hmm. smaller sports being not football and not basketball,
of course,
I think NIL is great. But for the NCAA as a whole, with those two sports, do you think it's going to be a good thing?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I think, you have to look at each athlete as an individual. And it's more about the opportunity that the athlete gets. And yes, like basketball and football naturally are going to eat more off of these deals. Schools stay afloat through, financial means, financial capital, and that's how organizations are able to thrive and grow. So naturally, they're probably going to put a little bit more focus on those groups. But I think, again, if you can find ways personally to bite at ambition, this is ambition for you. You get drive out of this. You're doing it. So it's like, I think people have so much to offer. It's just about digging a little and finding, all right, what gives me energy? Is there an opportunity? If not, let me create one. Let me start something. But if there is a channel of you being able to, exercise, work on those urges, and yes, like you're able to get a little bit of extra spending money off of it, I say do it. For me, that was like teaching. And so I was able to do it. I like photography. I don't necessarily like posting photos of myself, but I do like comfy clothes. So if that's what they're telling me to do, I'm going to do it. And I do have an appreciation for photography, so that's been fun. But I think ultimately it's about schools making sure that their athletes are taken care of. These business models of college sports are very tough, and so as long as, again, the programs that do well enough to sustain as many sports as possible, I think that's what Cal is amazing at. So we have like 32 sports, which is unprecedented, especially in the Power Five. That is such a money-driven business, a money-driven area. It's expensive to be in the Bay Area. It's, rent is expensive here, rent on all of the facilities. So these are all things that, Cal Athletics and other programs around the country are thinking about. And so it will be tough for other sports to last, but I think, again, it's hard because, even coming from a non-revenue sport like swimming, it's stuff that makes us think twice. You see men's swimming programs being cut all over the country. But it's like if there is a way, you just have to have a little bit of trust in the people that you surround yourselves with. If you're lucky enough to surround yourself with, again, people who will work hard for you. Not everybody has that opportunity, but I think if you find yourself in that situation, where you're unlucky on the short, if you draw a short straw, it's like, okay, what can you learn from that? And it's easier for me to just say, right? Because I'm on a team that is doing relatively well compared to other programs in the country. I'm not necessarily worried about my team being cut XYZ, so I can't speak to that experience. But if I were, if that were the reality for me, I would just try to, as hard as it is, look inward to what gives me energy. Because when things don't go my way, that's what I try to personally do. I try to find, again, a solution. And if there isn't one that's feasible, that's up to that person to do with that what they can. It'll be interesting to see how it looks. I think I don't think college sports is going to look the same even 5 years from now, especially not 10 to 20. But I hope that values are maintained and that people are allowed to be their best athletic selves in whatever sport they choose to practice, whether it be, swimming, gymnastics, tennis, football, basketball, baseball. I would love to see everybody be able to do what they want to do. So,
yeah, I don't know. It's awesome what you're saying. Like at the end, being able to do what you would like to do, because Cal, whatever people want to say about Cal, I think it's insane that, like you said, the 30 teams that we have here is
a lot of sports.
Dude, it's so many. Like, yeah. I think in the Pac-12...
it's the most in the Pac-12.
Yeah, like, sure. There's no other athletic department that has that many teams.
Stanford would be the only one.
Stanford has more student athletes. They don't have more teams, though.
More teams, yeah. So it's like when you talk about spreading resources, Cal has been the exemplary example. They've been amazing. And so I know Mr. Knowlton has a pretty hard job. I'd love to ask him about some of the decisions that he's been forced to make, and some of them, how he feels on certain outlook, or on the outlook for the future. But again, it's a lot of stressful stuff to think about, and in most situations, those things are out of our control as student athletes, as individuals. So I think it comes back to the point of just like controlling what you can control. And unfortunately, the only way that sports are going to be able to thrive is if the athletes can maximize their equity, their value, which comes in a number of ways. So like you, for instance, you have this, you can put ads on these videos, you can dish these out, you can do whatever you want with it. They're podcasting is a beautiful space. And so I like, it's amazing that you're doing what you're doing. I think this podcast, not only the people on it, not only you, but the model in and of itself is something that people can learn from. So I think the people that can just create their own, again, maximize their own equity through models that they can create, then I think that's going to be pretty powerful. And that's what's going to make these non-revenue sports last, because these aren't profitable models. So it takes a bit of tweaking here and there to make it work. But that's ultimately going to have to come from the athletes.
Yeah, no, it's something that's going to have to be worked out, because like you said, there's, 30 teams here, give or take, 25 teams that aren't profitable, like you're saying. So,
Mine included. Like swimming doesn't make money. I'm sure.
Oh, mine included for sure.
Yeah. Swimming, we could. I'd like to see us start like maybe having tickets for our events, because I know there's a rich swimming population out here in the Bay Area, and so if kids want to come see, like, I think that's one way that, $5 to get in the door at a swim meet, stuff like that. I think that could be beneficial.
Dude, I'm gonna be completely honest right now. When you mentioned that it was non-profitable, because I've gone to pretty much every swim meet for the past year. There's not enough swim meets, but which I get with the schedules. It's the bigger meets. I get it. Makes sense. But 2, it's packed every single time.
Yeah.
And when I see people walking in and out for free, I was honestly a bit confused. Like, it's a genuine question I have for Mr. Knowlton as well. Like, I've gotten the chance to talk to him multiple times, but it's like, why isn't it like literally that exact same number? I was thinking as soon as you mentioned it. It's like, if you charge everyone walking in $5, okay, maybe
for
it's
a dual meet.
For a dual
competitive dual meet where, if you get Arizona State at speaker,
dude,
if you get Arizona at speaker, you're seeing Olympians at work. So it's not like you're getting, whack competition out there. I don't know.
One of the first meets the first meet I ever went to, because this was post-COVID. I've been wanting to go for a while, but then COVID hit, whatever.
Of course.
Was the Virginia meet.
Yeah.
And I remember
electric.
Dude, I was there with a friend, and obviously it was right after Tokyo, and I'm like,
of course.
Dude, think about how expensive some of these tickets would have been, but I'm here at Cal, so I get to watch it for free. Dude, I'd pay like
it's stuff that the world watches.
Dude.
It's stuff that the world watches from, again, a paper perspective on the websites, XYZ, but if you can bring eyes to it, the Virginia women that year and every year are incredible. They have great, guys on their men's team. And then you get the same thing at Cal. Our men's team and women's team have some of the best athletes in the world. And so I think if you can create an environment that gets people stoked a little bit, say you got some smoky flares or lights, cameras, action. I know that's not our program, but that's what's going to sell. You have to make it an experience. If people aren't willing to read a little bit and understand what's out there, you have to make it a spectacle. Even though the athletes in and of themselves, it could be pretty bare bones, dry setting, and these are still the best athletes in the world, and they deserve to be looked at, and if people want to come see them perform, then I think there could be a ticket there too. But it's I think of the water polo game. I think of tickets, NCAA charging $50 to go see those boys play, and that should be the standard, because they again, these guys are the best in the world at what they do. So to have guys like Papa in your back, like the number one water polo player in the world, just an anomaly, just a talent that lives and that competes at just the highest level. I mean, who scores 7 goals to win a natty in the way that they, you know what I mean?
It's insane.
It's stuff that is only seen in movies, and you get to see it in your backyard. And I think there are opportunities for the quote unquote non-revenue sports to create a spectacle in and of themselves. And there are other ways, I'm sure with soccer, XYZ, other sports, again, that I don't really have experience in, but I know that with swimming and water polo, there's certainly an opportunity, and I know that opportunity exists with all of the other sports as well. So I'd love to see it happen. Yeah,
I would love to see it happen as well, and it's crazy. Even what you were mentioning right now with the it depends every time who you're swimming against, but regardless of that, it's even to watch the Cal athletes, you were saying,
of course,
some of the best in the world already. But then you and this is the crazy part, because in this conversation, I feel like I've gotten to know the personal side of you and then the business side of you right now, and we go back to what we don't like to get what we like, which is the clickbaity side of, Leon Marchand's ASU is coming to swim at Cal.
Mm-hmm.
But you get what you want of being able to inspire a kid that'll buy that ticket to come in and see that.
Exactly. And iron sharpens iron. So it's our two teams are so good. And so that's the beauty of competition which is above the headline XYZ. Yes, you have to, in order to be able to make money for sports, it's you're going to have to generate some here or there. But as long as it stays focused on the competition and the healthy competition, I think it can be beneficial.
So that's where you think the compromise is, with business, in the sense of, it's clickbaity, it's attention, but it's for a good cause. That's where it works out.
And it's not even about the clickbaity stuff. I mean, you pay for experience. And it's an experience watching Papa do what he does. It's an experience watching the Cal men's water polo team win a national championship at home, coming down by scoring 5 unanswered goals in the fourth quarter. It's that's what it is. That's what these guys are doing. It's simple. So it's you don't have to charge for it. Those guys can do their own thing and make their own bread, but I think the athletic department could, again, also eat a little bit, and potentially fairly distribute those funds now that it's legal, now that it's allowed, as it always should have been, because ultimately these guys are the ones doing the work and drawing the attention. But I think it can be done. I think there is a real solution for it. So.
Yeah, no, very, very interesting takes with the NIL and everything that goes about that, and even that full circle moment of right now, that compromise for that experience of maybe sacrificing that attention getter for something bigger. And it's something I was going to ask anyways with the NIL, because NIL is technically paying someone, like you said, personal financial equity.
Mm-hmm.
But it's how do you get there in the first place? How do you raise your value? And it's for athletes, it's through athletic performance, but it's but that doesn't define me.
Exactly.
But it gives me opportunities. So it's I don't know.
It's a slippery slope, of course. And there are mental throws that come with it. But I think nobody said it would be easy. It's not for anybody on any sports team. And so if you can just focus, I think, a friend of mine had something very good to say, and it's like, you can't, in life, you have to choose what your struggles are. You do. And so there are some struggles that you can kind of fall in love with and that you can kind of just deal with and get through. And it's easier said than done. But I'd like to think if you can utilize the resources that'll help you move through those hard times. Cal athletes have access to the Call Map, the ones that were here during COVID. That's something that I've invested a lot of time into. I do still need to do my daily calm for today. I've been quite busy, but it's what I'm going to do after this.
Yeah.
Just to clear my head, refocus. Spending time with friends, spending time speaking with friends about these things, because we're not the only ones that have these thoughts. But the power of meaningful conversation can take you a long way. So if you spend some time to sit down with, your teammates or your friends and discuss things out, hash these strong opinions and beliefs and these problems, hash them out, because that's the only way that they're going to get solved, is if you have dialogue. That's the only way things get better in every form of life. You have to have dialogue about the positive things and probably even more importantly, the negative things that need to be worked on, things that, have not been solved yet. You can do things. You have the power to do things, especially us college athletes have a lot of power. And so when you put these brains together and you can make things work, I think it can be a beautiful thing. And so, it just comes back to like how each of us on our team get better. It's by talking with one another. It's by having dialogue. It's by, chirping at practice, chirping somebody at practice. It's about uplifting other people at practice. It's about all of that. It's about dialogue. So I think, again, nobody has the solution. Nobody has the answers. But in my experience, I think that talking these things out with people that I trust and that are close to me has worked. I didn't know exactly what kind of vibe was going to sell with my cuts pictures. So I had to talk about it. It's not something that I can think about myself because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not, I don't go out there, one, focused on socials, two, understand what trends are, because if you go out there and do something that's doesn't snap eyes, doesn't catch eyes, it's not going to sell. You're not going to create an opportunity for yourself in that space. So with this specific project in particular, that's something that I'm struggling with. It's all right, well, what do I do here? What do I do with this? How do I, in order for me to actually create money off this, it has to make sense. So I don't want to do something that doesn't make sense. The branding aligned, but in terms of actually delivering the product, delivering my service, how was I going to do that in a way that was me, but again, got a little bit of a grab? And so that's what I tried to do. That's what I tried to do with all of the projects that I'm working on. But again, these aren't things that you can solve things yourself. But with this in particular, as an example, was something where I was I'm so far out of my comfort zone. I don't know what I'm doing. But we got people who do understand a little bit about the space. And even if they don't understand anything about the space, you can grow together all through dialogue. Yeah. So after many conversations with Mike, we got these things rolling. And so that's been fun. But there are so many other ways that you can apply just having positive dialogue and negative dialogue to generate positive solutions.
Yeah. If you can't already tell, I'm a big fan of dialogue. So.
Yeah, of course, you're living it out.
Yeah. No, I am a firm believer in dialogue, and I really do believe that you can find meaning and purpose in life through a meaningful conversation. Sure. So that's the best part with that. With the swimming, moving forward, the World Cup, what was that experience like for you?
Oh, it was amazing. I got to go to Berlin, Toronto, and then we had international meet stateside in Indianapolis. And so I was able to head out pretty early to Berlin to acclimate, get ready to go. And Fortunately, I did relatively well. I had to deal with some injury stuff in the middle of the meet when I was out there, but I had 2 more meets to go through, so that was fun to figure that out. And fortunately, again, like with the resources that were there, USC Swimming had people out there to help me through that process. And so, even though every race felt like I was beating my body up, I still had so much fun and learning again how to stay level mentally, how to, I guess, navigate competition with certain guys, and these guys are really good. And to be able to do it in front of swim fans was really cool. I didn't expect the turnout that we had in Toronto. And so to see like Canadian swimming fans who hadn't, maybe not seen a Cal athlete before, hadn't seen any of these athletes compete before. From my understanding, they don't host too many international competitions there, just like in the US. We don't host many like world meets and stuff like that. A lot of it is European and Asia dominated. So to have those experiences and be a part of that experience for other people was a really cool opportunity. And of course, it's just an amazing environment to compete in. So I was very lucky that I had the opportunity to go, and I'm, just very lucky to have gotten through it, experienced it, and I'm going to try all that I can to take those experiences moving forward, and hopefully it'll help me out for NCAA. So.
Yeah. With this mid-season point now after the World Cup, thinking NCAAs, like you just said, again, so slippery slope. What's your balance like between personal growth, personal process, helping my teammates get there, and, well, we want to place here, and here. We want to get X amount of points. We want to win.
Yeah. I think it's because the first half of the season is so structure focused. It's not about performance. It gives us an opportunity to look at what can be fixed, to hone in on the details, which is where we're at now. So for the last 4 months of this season, we start off by going, we'll have this week. We have finals week coming up. Once people execute on that, go home for a week, still manage your training, and then sharpen the tools. We have an uphill battle at OTC, our annual Colorado Springs camp, which is a great 15 days of hard work and team bonding. And, if we can get through that first healthy, mentally and physically, if you can take care of business at OTC, you can usually come off of that with some solid confidence that you can at least get the job done in March. And as long as we focus on the little things, keep things simple. NCAA's is one big math problem, but there are certain guys that can be put in certain spots if they execute well. And so if you can help, not only yourself deliver, but if you can help others deliver as well, more often than not, you're going to have an opportunity to win. And that's, it's not about the win in and of itself. Obviously that's nice, but it's about the opportunity. So,
well, what's that experience like at OTC? You were mentioning that, and I've seen it, I've heard about it, but I haven't asked.
Yeah.
So what's that like? I know it's crazy, but can you take me through a bit of it?
Yeah. So the one of the U.S. Olympic Committee's training centers is based in Colorado Springs, and funny enough, most of the summer sports actually train there, even though it is quite cold. There's one in Chula Vista as well.
Fun fact. I'm 5 minutes away from there.
I gotta say, like, you're probably from there.
Yeah.
Or are familiar with it. You're probably familiar with it. But
it's 5 minutes away. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I've never been to Chula, but in Colorado, it does get gritty. It's at, I want to say, anywhere from 6,000 to 6,500 feet altitude. And so that's the real kicker, especially for a sport like swimming that you're not really exposed to oxygen too much anyway. When you do breathe on the pool deck, when you're in the water, your body takes longer to recover. It responds to stress differently. And if you can go in healthy, if you can bite off the work when you're there, you feel pretty good coming off of it. But it does It is a camp. So you are there to work. You are there to reach, the bounds of your physical and mental limits. And our swim practices will press that pretty quick. And so it's all laid out. We know what we're doing. We know what we're doing going into every session. But it's a matter of actually getting it done and being able to stand up on the other side of it. So
yeah, we'll have fun.
Yeah, I'll try. There are always things to learn, and so I think this year I'll be able to do some things in terms of just dialing in a little bit more. In the past, I've always had to juggle a couple of things. Again, great experiences in the past, but this year I really wanted to take every opportunity that I can to focus on training. And I will definitely have that opportunity pretty soon here. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Last few questions to close out.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that, again, recent interview, and it's something I'm very confused on. I asked Isabel. She had no answer for this.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you guys call it warm down instead of cool down?
I think people call it both.
You do call it both?
People say cool down.
Okay, because I've only heard warm down, and I'm
cool
like,
what
do you mean?
Yeah. No. I think it's just because it's warm up. Warm up, warm down. It's easier, but at least in my opinion, I don't know.
I don't know. It's like you warm up and like you turn on and then you shut down, type of thing.
True. Maybe everybody has gotten it wrong. Maybe it should just be cool down, which is I wouldn't be opposed to it. But just one of those funny things.
Because it's only with swimming, and I see it in interviews, like swimming podcasts, swimming interviews, post-race interviews, and it's like I have to go warm down, and it's like, what do you mean?
Well, because I think the purpose, at least in swimming, cool down, warm down, whatever you want to call it, you don't just go in and like swim easy. Like you have to generate a little bit of motion to flush all of that lactic acid out. So you're not just like swimming easy, at least in my warm down, how I've learned to take care of myself. I love to get to a spot where I'm operating at 80% for a fair bit of the cool down. Obviously, you get your flop in there, you get your easy swimming. But if you just stay flatlining and just like flop around, just kick easy, you can actually build soreness even faster on the other side of it, no matter how good it feels in the moment. So I like to usually flush out with a bit of strong kicking, strong swimming, little sharp stuff. So it's not full like cool down. Like there's a little bit of warm stuff in there, I guess. But I might have to start just saying cool down. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah. I was so confused by that. But that was that. And as a leader, with your leadership role here on the team, trying to have that impact on others, what would be your biggest fear as a leader?
Having somebody take something the wrong way. I think I've been exposed to pretty tough leaders, and I've had tough mentors whom I love, who I will be forever indebted to them. That's just the way I've been taught. I've been brought up. And I understand that not everybody has the same experiences that I do. So I think it's important to have many leaders, which is why we do at our program not choose captains, which I think is an amazing thing.
Really?
I think it's another part of why I've been so drawn to this program. It's the class leads as a collective. The senior class are captains. The fifth years are leaders, This year, I've taken a step back. It's very much so on the fourth year seniors to guide things and how they want to guide things. If Jordan asks me to speak, I'll speak. If, there is a conversation in the locker room, we usually, at least to date, the seniors usually run it, leave it up to the fifth years to add their little piece, perhaps at the end. To most, these guys are really good at what they do, so I don't really have a whole lot to add ever. So it's tough to really call me a leader because all 38 of our guys could lead in a number of ways. We all have things to bring to the table. So I just try to, I guess in leading, it's like you just have to listen to one another, especially your peers and the guys that are with you in your class. And so I think that's what our senior class, did a good job of, is playing off one another's strengths to help the team as a collective. We were a pretty small class. We didn't have too many people. And we listened a lot to our fifth years and benefited a lot from our fifth years, both from a leadership perspective, but obviously a performance perspective as well. And so when you don't have captains, I think it lets everybody be their best selves, which obviously is great. Why would you not want that? So that's at least in my last year on this team, and as a quote unquote leader on the outside, that's what I've tried to focus on, is by trying to send the right message, trying to be I think we're all extensions of Dave Durden. I think that's why we all give credit to him. And you can be extensions of, great leaders in different ways. And I think all of us find inspiration in him and try to draw certain things from him. And so if we can all buy into the mission, great things can happen. Not only for us as individuals, but for this athletic department and for a collective, for the collective. I think you saw water polo live it out, and so that's what we're trying to do here too. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Very last question, the full circle moment for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
What is your definition of success?
Oh man, waking up in the morning, finding something to learn. And if at the end of the day, you can say you actually have learned it, or you can answer it a little better, or you have found something that you want to continue to work on, I think that's kind of what it is. That's how I've chosen to define my success, inside and outside of the water. I think that if you can just find something, again, that you are in the act of pursuing, and if you're able at the end of the day to answer something a little bit better than you could at the beginning of the day, I think that's what success is.
Awesome. That's all I got. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything that I missed?
No. If there are people watching this that, want to book a swim lesson, you can find me on InstaCoach. And of course, get your cuts gear. You can use my code Whitley at checkout. But other than that, maybe find, if you find yourself on the couch at the end of March and in need of some entertainment, please do not hesitate to turn on the men's and women's NCAA Championships at the end of the year. Support your Bears. So
those are going to be two separate clips coming out at distinct times, right there for your sponsors, and then to hype up the Bears in late March.
Yeah. Of course. Thank you, Fernando, for having me on. It's these conversations are great. I think what you're doing here is incredibly impressive, and so thank you for having me on again.
Thank you for coming on once again. I really, really enjoyed this episode, and my favorite episodes are where I don't have to look down at this thing, and it flowed so naturally. I learned so much, and it was so natural. So thank you, really appreciate it. And as you already know, the doors to this podcast are always open for you.
Thank you, boss.
So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And to everyone that watched on YouTube or listened on Spotify, thank you so much. You can like and subscribe on YouTube. You can follow on Spotify. And that's pretty much it for today. I'll see you all next time.
Sweet.
That's it.
Awesome, man.